It's time for another podcast by George. Straight talk, straight from the heartland, that'll have you saying, "By George, I think he's got it." Now, here's George.
Hello, hi, how are you? And welcome on in to another podcast by George. Well, you've seen it in the news, you've heard about it. The day is approaching. It's the 20th anniversary, believe it or not, and it's hard for an old boy like me to kind of get a handle on these numbers sometimes. 20 years, and everybody's got their own story, their own situation and circumstance. I do too, and to kind of give you the fundamentals of where I was at, what I was doing, like a lot of folks, I was at work on that day. And just humming along, and the internet was in its fledgling stages. It was in its early stages, actually. We didn't have a television in the office, obviously. Nobody's watching TV while they're supposed to be working. So here comes this news on the internet, and we start watching it, and we start seeing the visuals of a plane into the tower there. But because the internet was early, it actually froze up, or it quit working in our office anyway. We were watching on Yahoo or something like that. But what I'll always be remembering on that day was my mother was in the hospital. She was in a clinic. She was dying of cancer, folks. And I went to see her because I knew this news would be troubling her. I knew televisions are on in the hospital rooms and that type of thing. And I went over there. And it was interesting. Now, my mother was a news hound. She was intently interested in news of all types. It's kind of where I got my interest and background in the news, obviously. But I don't know if she had the TV on or not. If she did, she wasn't paying attention to it. And I talked to her about it a little bit, and she really was not that interested. And that, folks, when you're dying, when your own circumstances are such that your life is on the line, that's all that matters. That's what was paramount. I mean, she was fighting for her life, and she lost that battle, but she wasn't as interested in the 9/11 news coverage as I thought that she would be. And that's how I always remember it. And I didn't really have a true personal connection to 9/11 until I met a guy at a hockey rink, Bill Walsh, from New York City. His son was trying out for the Des Moines Buccaneers hockey team. Great young hockey player. I remember him just like it was yesterday. Tall, rangy, left-handed centerman out of New York that was trying out for the Buccaneers. And I got to talking to Bill and became a friend and found out that he had kind of a unique and a tragic story, a unique story, though. And I wanted him to talk about it a little bit on the show today. So before we get into this news article that'll get us started here, I just want to say hi and welcome him back. Bill, welcome back to a podcast by George.
Good morning, George. Good to see you.
Yeah, and
I have to figure out how to get the messages from coming on my my phone here.
Well,
a little annoying. Does that? Can you hear that?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, I'm gonna have to.
No, it's good. Don't worry about it, pal.
All right.
It's all right.
Figure that out.
Well, explain to folks where you're at there. Now, people have sets all the time and stuff in the background. That's a workshop, obviously. Yeah.
I didn't set this up. I'm in my workshop. I'm currently under the gun to get things. This time of year is harvest season. I live up in Warwick, New York. I have a small piece of property. I got a couple of apple trees, a pear tree. I put in a vineyard like 3-4 years ago. So it's a little half-acre vineyard, and I'm retired now, so I have to take up my time. So everything seems to ripen at the same time. So I'm in my workshop, and basically I have a juicer in front of me, 40 pounds of pears on my side, and I'm talking to George. I'm getting through. I'm working.
Yeah. And he's retired from FDNY Squad 41. We got to mention that. I remember it. And Bill started his firefighting career, coincidentally, the time that I was starting on WHO back in 1980. So let me get to this article here, and this will give us the fundamentals on this, and let's get to it. Okay, this is from the BBC, and it's a nice synopsis. September 11th attacks, what happened that day and after. On Tuesday, 11 September 2001, suicide attackers seized U.S. passenger jets and crashed them into two New York skyscrapers, killing thousands of people. The attack remains one of the most traumatic events of the century, not only for Americans, but also for the world. Remember now, this is from the BBC. What were the targets? Well, 4 planes flying over the eastern U.S. were seized simultaneously by small teams of hijackers. They were then used as giant guided missiles to crash into landmark buildings in New York and Washington. Don't forget that. 2 planes struck the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York. The first hit the North Tower at 8:46 Eastern Time. The second crashed into the South Tower at 9:03 in the morning. The buildings were set on fire, trapping people on the upper floors and wreathing the city in smoke. In less than 2 hours, both 110-story towers collapsed in massive clouds of dust. At 9:37, the third plane destroyed the western face of the Pentagon, the giant headquarters of the U.S. military jet just outside the nation's capital. In Washington, D.C., the fourth plane crashed in a field in Pennsylvania at 10:03 in the morning after passengers fought back. It's thought the hijackers had meant to attack the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. with that plane. Now, in all, 2,977 people, not counting the 19 hijackers, lost their lives, most of them in New York. All 246 passengers and crew aboard the 4 planes were killed. At the Twin Towers, 2,606 people died then or later of injuries. And at the Pentagon, 125 people were killed. Citizens of 77 different countries were among the casualties in New York City. They lost 441 first responders. Now that brings us to our guest. Let's get back with Bill here. And Bill, rather than have you relive this moment by moment, which I know no one ever gets over, and I know it's a painful experience, what I'm struck by was the unique situation with you and the timing of your shift with the fire department that resulted in you just barely not being on duty, but then going in after these planes hit. Tell us about that angle.
Well, Bob Gallione, he's the senior man at Rescue 2, said it best when he said that, as for the New York City firefighters, that we were all victims of the chart, meaning that it's a 25-man, two platoon work chart that you're assigned to. So if your number was working that day, that was it. That was the chart. In the New York City Fire Department, we switched shifts a lot. So I was a lieutenant in engine, actually squad 252 in Brooklyn at the time. And I was working opposite Lieutenant Tim Higgins. And we would switch our tours so that it would be, I'd be 24 hours on, he'd be 24 hours on, and then we were off. So I took the first 24 and he took the second 24. And I worked, that was Tuesday morning. So I worked Sunday night and Monday day. So I worked from 6 p.m. Sunday night till 6 p.m. Monday day, and he worked from 6 p.m. Monday night till 6 p.m. He's supposed to work till 6 p.m. Tuesday night, and the attack occurred on the morning of Tuesday. So I had just gotten off the night before. I just got relieved, and all the guys that were at the firehouse, that new platoon that came in, all of those guys were killed. In fact, one of them, it was his first day back from, he had a knee surgery. And he was the quarterback for the New York City Fire Department football team. And it was his first tour back that night, after maybe 6 months, because he had a big knee surgery. So, I rode my motorcycle into work the day before, and I rode home that night. And Monday night it was raining. It was like last night here. We had that hurricane come by, and it was raining. And usually if I rode my bike in and it rained, I'd just stay over. I'd stay in the firehouse. But for some reason, the clouds broke at like 7 o'clock at night. I was still hanging around in the firehouse waiting for the weather to change. The clouds broke, it opened up, it got sunny for about 10 minutes. I got on the bike, headed home, and on the way home, I stopped at a light, and Squad 252 drove by and they all waved to me, and that was the last time I saw him.
My God. Well, again, rather than go through the painful experience in your mind's eye again describing this, when I mentioned the fact that those first responders die, people, one angle that they don't consider very much, and I want you to talk about this because it's intrinsic to your vocation, to being a fireman. People call it a brotherhood, and people just, yeah, that's just a brotherhood. But I mean, you people work together, but you also live together. So what happened to those firefighters hits home harder with a brotherhood than it would just like with a company of other types of workers, I think, anyway.
Well, to bring it up to modern times, I'd call it a family. I
Oh,
take the gender out of it. It's just a family. We're all family, and it's the fact that they call it a firehouse. They don't call it a fire station in New York. And so basically, you're living there. Um, Depending on how busy you are, you're constantly moving all day. I know people, think that we sleep a lot, but I didn't sleep until I retired. Um, it's one of the most important parts of the firehouse is the kitchen, and in the kitchen, everybody's on the same level, whether you be a deputy chief or a probationary fireman. I mean, it's a matter of respect. You have to. There are guidelines as to what you can and cannot do. But it's basically the kitchen is basically a place where the world's wisdom is bestowed upon you, and you could ask any question or have any problem, and put it out on the kitchen table, and I'm sure somebody's going to have an answer. Whether it's how do I jack up my house to my kids are starting school, or I got a problem with the alternator on my truck. There's just something there that just and that's the part of the firehouse that's really sacred, is the kitchen, and the family aspect of it is most important, because like, even though I retired as a captain, I'm no different than, I'm not a captain standing in the street telling the guys what to do. I'm in there with the guys. So when it comes down to fire knows no rank, that's that's an absolute, and you can see that that happens all the time because of firefighter deaths in the United States and everywhere, actually.
when this happened, you had already been on the job for 20 years. And as I mentioned, you learned of this. I went down there again, rather than reliving this. You did what you could, and then the cleanup began literally, and you were vested in that 100%. But then your career as a firefighter continued. What was your career like post 9/11 as opposed to leading up to it? Did the joy
Well,
go out of that somewhat?
no. Well, here's the situation. So I was home, and my sister-in-law called me and said, "Put on the news." So I put on the news, and I sat down, and I was home with my youngest. No, let me see. My middle son, Cookie, he was 4, and my youngest son he was just an infant. So I sat down on the couch, and I was looking at the fire at the World Trade Center, and for the first World Trade Center attack, it was I was up in Canada at a hockey tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when they blew up the bomb in the basement of the World Trade Center, and I was a fireman at Squad 1, and like that was probably the biggest job in I think it was 1992. That occurred. Actually, the lieutenant that I was working with got the Gordon Bennett for going down in a hole and getting Kevin Shea out of the bomb crater. But so I was sitting there watching the news and just looking at the fire, saying, all right, like, how many floors of fire they have, what's going on, just kind of like doing a size up, because that's what you do. That's, it's just, it's innate. After a while, you start as a probie trying to learn how to like read a fire building. And then as you get older and more experienced, so you just reading fire. So I was looking at it, trying to figure out what was going on. I knew these guys had a good job on their hands, but hey, look, you know what? It's the beginning of the fire. Let's see what transpires. they could actually get water on this, we'll be fine. And then the second plane came in, and that's when I knew we were being attacked. And I told my wife I'm leaving, and I was out of the house in about 15 minutes, and got down to the trade center probably because I live like an hour and 15 minutes away, maybe more, hour and a half, like 10 or 15 minutes after the second tower collapsed. And basically I was there trying, because we lost all our command. We lost basically chief of department, the chief of SOC, my boss. So many people were gone at that moment. So other guys stood up and started taking over the rescue. And at that point, it was a rescue. It was still a rescue because if you see the collapse that happened in Miami, I think about 2 weeks later, they turned it into recovery because people can survive an incredible amount of time in a collapse situation. So we jumped right into the rescue mode. A bunch of us got together and came up with a plan and how we're going to attack this thing. And we started. And then because I was until further orders at the UFO in Squad 252, I wasn't assigned. They assigned me to New York Task Force 1, and I was assigned to the trade center. So basically from that day till a day, we broomed it up and closed the site. I was assigned there. And, when it turned from a rescue to a recovery, it was a big cleanup.
Well, everybody's got their personal story and remembrance of that fateful day. A lot of people think they know about it or know what happened. What do you tell people when you get into those conversations? They think they know, but what don't most people understand or realize, or what do you know that they don't know?
As a special operations fireman, I'm trained to deal with major emergencies, plane crashes, train derailments, building collapse, sinking ships, ship fires, stuff like that. And the magnitude of the incident was just super overwhelming. It's just it's sensory overload. It's too much information to digest. And that's when you kind of you just simplify the task. What am I doing next? And the next thing I had on my agenda is all firefighters have what's called a pass alarm. It's a personal alert safety system. And basically, if you stop moving for 60 seconds, it's hooked onto your mask. And if you stop moving for 60 seconds, if you don't jiggle it like this, if you're just standing there for 60 seconds, a pre-alarm will go off, and then you could unshake it. But once the normal alarm goes off, you have to shut it off manually. And all of the pass alarms were going off. There was and between the smoke and the stuff that was still falling and the fire, and it was just try to locate a pass alarm, try to find one that's and maybe somebody's attached to it, and it was totally unsuccessful. It did not work. They couldn't get to them. Not that they were, I believe that just by that time, just the collapse itself. If you think about the kinetic energy that's stored in a 110-story building, that each floor is probably, I don't know what the dimensions were, but they were pretty big. Each floor just drops an inch. The kinetic energy in that is like amazing. So think about 110 stories of that, and so few survivors. There was a couple people. There's a few people that lived, survived through the collapse, but not many.
Well, as I mentioned, there are going to be all kinds of events and commemorations and news coverage here leading up to, because it's a, a number. It's a 20th anniversary.
Yeah,
What about you
yeah.
personally? Do you stay away? Do you go back? Do you participate in any of these commemorations? What do you plan to do for the 20th anniversary of this?
Well, I've been to the museum once, and that was when it first opened, and it was just they were allowing first responders in, and we were down in New York City with my family, and I just said, hey, come on, let's go. And we actually walked through the museum. It had to be 12 o'clock at night, 12:30 in the morning, something like that. And it's a very powerful place. I go to the firehouse every year. We have there's a mass, and we do a little lunch, and then basically that's it. There's other things that are going on in the city. I've never been down there for the reading of the names. That's mostly for the families and for the general public. The firehouses are kind of like we're pretty low key about it. We'll go there and respect the fallen. And the 252 has a mass in the firehouse. 41 has a mass in the church on the corner. So this year, with my family, a lot of times my family doesn't even go. I'll just go down myself. This year with my family, we're gonna go to. I think we'll go to the ringing of the bells at 252, because there's a moment of silence at when the first plane hits, and a moment of silence when the second plane hits, and then at the collapses, and then they have a mass, and then I'll go up to 41 to have a lunch, and that's it. Keep it simple.
Yeah. And I appreciate you coming on the podcast, Bill. You were able, for an ironic twist of fate, to escape this unscathed, and physically anyway. And thank God that you were able to do that. Bill, I might mention, won a heroism award with FDNY Squad 41, the William F. Conrad Medal. During his career. He also, if people are listening to him and he sounds familiar, maybe even looks familiar, as we move on in years here, he was on a television show about a fire department, Third Watch. I like talking about that. This isn't the time for that. I'm going to revisit that because I've got some questions about that that I'd still like to have Bill answer, Third Watch. And we started off talking about retirement, Bill. So let's end that way. Tell us how retirement is for you after your career and having gone through what you went through.
Well, after I got my third back surgery, and the department told me I had to go home. I didn't want to. I wanted to do 35. I ended up doing 28. Came home. It's going from 100 to 0 quickly. Thank God. At the time, I had my boys were young, 13, 10, and 7. So I was lucky enough to because at the time it was between working and I was working at the rescue school also, where I'm trying to get everybody up to, because we lost so much experience. In that one day, I think we lost 6 squads, 5 rescues.
My God.
And it's a lot of technical experience to get everybody on board, back up to speed. So basically, I was never around, and then doing television also, I was never around. So my boys were kind of. It was a perfect time for me to retire. Once again, blind luck. I don't know if they'll agree to it, but I jumped into their lives, and I got a chance to help them grow into be men, and which they're all. My youngest is 21 now. He's in school. My oldest is he's working, and he's got a family, and it's just a retirement is what you make of it, and it's I'd rather be fighting the fires, but then again, I don't know about those 3, 4, 5, 6 runs, early morning runs, just for I'm okay without that, I guess. Yeah, I'll sleep. I'm sleeping now.
That's great. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
It's well
Yeah.
deserved. Enjoy your
Yes.
retirement. Enjoy your family, pal. And thanks again from the bottom of my heart.
That's the idea now. Just earn, earn your retirement.
Folks, you've been listening and watching Bill Walsh. He's a retired New York City fireman. He was with FDNY Squad 41, retired at the rank of captain, as he mentioned, and a friend of Podcast by George. Bill, thanks for coming back on.
Thank you, George.
Good luck.
What do you want to talk about? Anything else?
That's going to do it for this particular episode, but I do want to come back on because I've got some questions about television in particular and being an actor and those types of things. I've always been curious about that, and I've still got the clip of you on Third Watch, and if our folks want to get kind of a preview of what we're going to be talking about next time around, go ahead and look that up, and it'll give them a background on his acting career. It's interesting. It really is, and we'll talk about that next time around, but that's going to do it for this show.
Okay, George, take care.
And folks, if you like Podcast by George, please subscribe to us on YouTube's a great place to get each and every episode. If you subscribe, you'll be notified when the new editions drop. You can ring the notification bell for that. And of course, you can also follow us on Facebook, and you can subscribe on iTunes if you prefer the audio-only versions of the podcast. And those are great in your car and bicycle and on jogs and that kind of stuff. But that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. That's all there is, and there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.